Well, good morning, everyone. I have been struggling with Instagram this morning. I'm like, well, I know I need to get going here, but Instagram has just totally evaporated. So we were supposed to be live on Instagram. We apparently won't be today because Instagram has just gone. And I thought it was Facebook, but then it wasn't Facebook because I saw our friend Lisa saying, "Good morning, everyone." So the party people are in the house. That's a good thing. I've got my new glasses on, trying to get used to these today. I have never had a pair of bifocal lenses. I've never done this before. I've always had the what do they call it? Progressive lenses. And it didn't take that long to get used to those, really. I mean, really, I could see pretty well out of them. But man, I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble with these lenses. So it's gonna take me a minute, I think, to get used to them. As you can see, my friend Michael is not here with me today. He ran away from home. He had some things he had to do this morning. So he's hoping maybe be on kind of more toward the end, but he's not going to be on with me this morning, which is great because I can do all kinds of things with. I'm just kidding. So I have good news and I have bad news other than the Michael thing. So Jason Murphy is not with us live. We taped him yesterday and we're going to show him here in just a minute, but he's not live. So I'm really sorry about that. But here's what we can do to fix that situation. So if while you're watching the video, you have, questions or comments or something, throw them in the group chat or throw them in the chat, live chat, and we'll discuss those, even if I have to stop the video to discuss them, because I think you're going to be I don't know, frustrated maybe. I mean, I'm frustrated. So maybe I'm projecting and I'm saying because I'm frustrated, everybody else should be frustrated. But I think this was the topic that we discussed, which is ethics in the legislature, I think is a super important one. And I talked to Michael yesterday after we had finished recording with Jason Murphy. And I have a question. And I mean, anybody who's on this morning, you can I'm throwing this out. Do we even know what ethics are anymore? I mean, really, honestly, do we have an idea of what that looks like? Or do we have an idea of what that looks like? But then if we try to whistleblow, the judiciary shuts us down, or we're just too tired and exhausted to push back. I mean, I really am curious to know, because when the kids were little, and I meant to get it, and then the Instagram thing happened, but we had a little book that was compiled. I believe it's compiled or written by George Washington. So it's, old. And it was a little tiny book, and it was about ethics. And when the kids were in middle school, the rule was we had to eat as a family. We had to have dinner as a family. There really wasn't, you couldn't get out of jail free card on that one. It was like a had. Good morning, Julia. How are you? And so one of the things that we did during the time that we were doing, our family meals, is that we would read a little bit out of this George Washington ethics book. And once I start the video, I may run off and see if I can find it. So we can just talk about it briefly. But I do think, and Lisa said that she thinks that we do know what ethics are, but the world may not. And again, I think that's another problem with public education. Why are we not telling kids what ethics are and how important ethics are? Because we talked about the whole idea of this country is that our Constitution doesn't work if we don't keep self-control first and foremost. If we can't control ourselves, then the government has to or does come in and do it for us. And so part of the thing about ethics is learning self-control, right? So I'm going to go ahead and pull up our video with Jason. So good morning. Oops, I overtalked myself. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up and get it started. I'm going to see if I can find ethics left right along with common sense. It's taboo nowadays. John, I don't disagree. But let's go ahead and play the video from yesterday that we did with Jason. And then, like I said, I'm going to run and go find that book for later. And then if you've got questions starting out, let me know. So I'm going to go ahead and here we go. Mr. Murphy.
Hey, thank you for having me back.
Well, I think after last week, people are probably dying to have you back.
Sure. Yes. That's a lot of pressure,
Well, I guess if you're one of the few people calling out some of the stuff that's going on at the Capitol, that probably is a little bit of pressure. I would agree.
We're up for it. And I think the overall issue is probably only people that are ready to talk about it in a way that matters are independent media types who are publishing on Substack, because you're not going to read about really anything helpful in, say, the Oklahoman.
No. So it's a good thing we're all here together today. So I want to start with what happened on the last day of session, because I think there is a massive amount of confusion out there. And I'll be honest, me included. There was a whole, I've heard from legislators, I've heard from people watching, this is like the 360-degree vision kind of a thing. There are so many perspectives in this, but I think both Michael and I want to hear from you about what you think. Why was a vote left open for 4 hours?
And I think it might have been even 5, but it's not uncommon that the last couple of days of a legislative session feel like insane, and they take so many twists and turns that.
Okay, I'm going to stop that just 1 second, because Lisa, she found it. That's it. So we'll talk more about this when we close out, but yeah. And then Julia said, there are 2 religions. One follows the way, the truth, and the life of our Lord, the Creator, and the other religion tries to replace these things with men's law. That's true. And it was 5 hours. Joy. Okay.
To do a proper recap of it is a whole episodic adventure hour by hour, just because politicians use the fulcrum, that is the mandated deadline, as a way to control and manipulate and brainwash and really get other people into a mindset that those people do whatever politician seeking whatever outcome is trying to do. So there are a few alphas in that process, and there are a lot of lemmings and followers. And then as the day goes on, someone who wasn't a lemming and was clear thinking at 10 a.m. by 10 p.m. that person is doing something they should not be doing, and it's just a fascinating observation of human behavior, for one, because it's a very unique environment to study. But then, of course, once you really get into it, and it exposes a lot of what's wrong with the legislature, in that things that are normally hidden behind closed doors have a way of starting to get a little transparency to them. And so your question about a vote is open for 4 or 5 hours, what is that about? And the thing that exposes is the fact that there's arm twisting going on. Of course, there are plenty of indicators that arm twisting is much deeper than it should, maybe even within the constraints of law. But it exposes how the system works or doesn't work, in that people are talking about that arm twisting. Why after 5 hours does someone who was voting no suddenly decide, I think I should have voted yes? Why?
Well, let's
back up for 5 hours. What changed?
Yeah. So let's back up for the people who don't know. What bill were we talking? Let's talk about the 5-hour bill first, and then let's move on from there. What bill are we talking about?
And so there was legislation which the governor vetoed, and it was a series of sections dealing with the Oklahoma Military Department. The word got out that the House of Representatives wanted that bill very badly, to the point that the House seemed to be indicating that they would not consider any veto overrides that senators wanted on senators' bills, unless this one bill that was so important for some very strange reason to the Oklahoma House of Representatives was also overridden. But more than that, apparently the House of Representatives didn't trust the Senate. So they wouldn't take the pro tem's word, probably, that we'll override it. They had to wait and make sure it happened. And so while the Senate held a vote open for 4 or 5 hours, the House did nothing. Right. They stood by and stood around. Now, I personally, as a citizen of Oklahoma, I would much rather than be standing by and doing nothing than doing something, especially as Tiny Die approaches. But of course, we all know that once they get their way, they will do whatever it takes to do what legislators do at the end of session. And 90% of it, in this case, I don't think was good, which is that after 6 years, Governor Stitt found his veto pen. And I would suggest that was a huge win for the people of Oklahoma, because in that last week of session, the House had suspended transparency rules, which meant anything was going to happen, could happen. My theory is that because legislators realized that Stitt had found his veto pen, they were not advancing the attacks on the people of Oklahoma that we feared would happen. And that was a really neat twist and turn to this legislative session. Stitt seemed to be honestly looking through legislation and saying, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. I'm just going to veto it. And I think legislators knew that if they passed bad bills in the last week, after they left and went home, Stitt would, I want to veto these. But the gist of it was there were...
I'm sorry. The same thing. Sorry. Okay.
60 some bills that Stitt had vetoed in time for the legislature to override that veto. But for some reason, one of those bills was so important to the House of Representatives that they put at risk the veto overrides on many of those other pieces of legislation and made it contingent upon one single House bill. And that was a House bill dealing with the military department, retirement pay, who maybe could be an adjutant general appointed by the governor, various components of military department policy. And that was so important to the House that they refused to do anything that the senators wanted until the senators first and foremost did what they wanted as it relates to that one single bill.
Do you happen to have the bill number just so we can put it out there for the number?
It is not in front of me, and it should be. I apologize for that.
No worries, because I don't have it either. I'll find it and then stick it in there, so I wouldn't worry about it. But I think we do both know who the author of that bill was.
It was someone who purportedly had enough power, enough standing, notwithstanding the fact that he's elected by one single House district. The author of that bill, Chris Kennedy, reportedly had enough power to stop the entire legislative process for 5 hours. And so for whatever reason, Kyle Hilbert, who is the Speaker of the House, who technically has the power of the House, though he shouldn't, he appeared to acquiesce to whatever Kennedy wanted him to do, even if it meant legislators sitting around for much of the afternoon and early evening, waiting on the arms to be twisted, waiting on the deals to be made, no doubt, over in the Senate to unclog the pipes and let the system start to do what it does for the worse again.
Well, let's also point out too that Representative Kennedy he's in a new position in the House. Kyle Hilbert, Speaker, created a position specifically for him, and that is counselor to the Speaker. Representative Kennedy is an attorney. He works at a large law firm in Oklahoma City, and he is also a member of the National Guard. And this bill was, like you said, the military department, which in Oklahoma is the National Guard. He is a member of the National Guard. So 5 hours in arm twisting notwithstanding, my question for you, Jason, is here is an author of a bill who is in fact in the armed services, who would, the bill that he authored would directly affect him. Is there or is there not supposed to be, I'm not even going to say is anymore, it's just ridiculous. Isn't there supposed to be a set of ethics that would say, I'm not running a bill for which I would either benefit or have anything to do with at all? It would affect me at all. I mean, and I guess you could say broadly, well, I can't run a bill against taxes because I pay taxes. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a person in the National Guard running a bill about the way the National Guard would function.
Yeah. It's called taking constitutional privilege.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there just because of a couple of things. Number one, visits on with us this morning. Good morning, Mary. A group of military folks in the state legislature with a great deal of power not acting as expected. Are we going to talk about this in a couple of weeks? Might be nice. Just point of order, as I guess they say. So we're going to talk about constitutional privilege here. And I'm just curious, did anybody know, and I'm not joking, I mean, I'm putting myself out here for you to see my ignorance. For years, I've never really known what constitutional privilege was. I mean, you go to a bill and you see it, and down below it'll say yay, nay, excused, and constitutional privilege. And I was always like, constitutional privilege. Not really sure what that means. So he's going to talk about it. And I think it's really important that we know what constitutional privilege is. And not only that, but me and Mary and the Moms for Liberty and some other groups can find out how many people have taken constitutional privilege this last session. And was it for the reason to take constitutional privilege, or was it just so I didn't have to say I was excused on a vote? Kennedy, Pugh, Rosino, it's a growing list. Okay.
Legislators are not allowed to vote on something that has a very specific benefit to them. If the benefit can be conveyed to a large class of people, such as tax reduction, obviously affecting everyone, that type of an issue, then the legislators don't need to take constitutional privilege on that. but where there's the potential for a very specific benefit to that legislator, maybe even just a benefit that, only a specific class of people, such as a specific occupation, receives benefit from, then it is absolutely imperative for that legislator to take what is called constitutional privilege, where they do not vote on the bill. And certainly beyond that, common sense suggests they should not sponsor the bill. And certainly beyond that, common sense suggests that they shouldn't kill the whole legislative process somehow and magically through their powers if they potentially are close to that subject matter. So as far as the specifics of this case and the Kennedy example, I would suggest it's in very bad judgment for him to even vote on the bill. And I would suggest it's in very bad judgment and then some of him to sponsor the bill.
Well, let me ask you this. So had you been a legislator at the time, because you have been previously a legislator, if you had been in the House of Representatives at that time, would you have from your desk said something like, point of order, why are we even hearing this bill? Because the person who's running the bill there's a conflict of interest here. I mean, do legislators, are they not even allowed to say something like that? Or I'm curious, seriously.
No, I think that would be entirely appropriate to do, and certainly to put that legislative author on the record explaining maybe why they're sponsoring a bill, asking if they intend to take constitutional privilege, and at least put them on the record trying to defend why it is they have the bad judgment to do something that's so close in subject matter to what is their personal financial, their personal network. You can only imagine the standing that gives us a person in his position with the decision makers that make decisions that affect his career or his budget or whatever. All of these need to be talked about. Of course, doing so with a powerful person in the House, because power is so centralized as opposed to decentralized amongst the members like it should be, is to take one's legislative
in your own hands
into jeopardy, put it into jeopardy. And we have a very good example of that. And that was that there was one brave senator, Shane Jett, who, when Senator Racino did what I also think, in my personal view, to be a terrible conflict of interest, which was to decapitate an agency head of an agency with whom his wife has some sort of employee.
Right. Let's stop there, though. Let's finish out the Kennedy one and then go to that one, because that one deserves its own time. So I wanted to make a point, and I'm sorry for stopping you, because
no, it's fine.
I mean, to me, this was I was more okay. I'm going to stop myself right there, because I want to point out something that Dana said. Dana said, legislators in conflict of interest is okay per Paxton. So why would we expect the majority to take this seriously? And so then Dorn says Paxton should not have had a say on SB2. He has direct ties to the industry. And then Julia says Kennedy terms out, but he'll still be pulling strings. Our system is jacked up. I would definitely agree with that. Now I'm going to non-interrupt myself. More than mildly PO'd about all of that going on. And here's part of the reason why. So you followed 224. We've talked about 224. 224 was the workforce data bill, where we were going to click these two databases together and have seamless data sharing for all of kids' data from K through 12 through workforce. And so many of us, I mean, I think there were something in the neighborhood of 15 or 25 groups that were, parent type groups that were against this bill. And we've talked about it before, and you followed it. We've talked about it. The bill had, going through the process, it was killed, then it was resurrected, then it was killed again, then it was brought back, then it was killed finally. So I think my issue is, one of the times that it was resurrected was a time in which it had just been voted down. Speaker Hilbert steps in, takes over the podium, revotes the bill, I don't even think it was a 60-second window for voting. I may be wrong, but it was extraordinarily short. And boy, they got those votes in there, the votes that were no before some of them flipped. And then, like magic, it's returned from the grave. I want to know why it is that we can leave a vote. And people were complaining because the person in the seat before Kyle took over, Speaker Hilbert took over, they were saying we're running the votes too fast. I mean, how is it that can't you just say we're going to leave this vote open for every vote stays open for 5 minutes? If you can't get to your seat and vote on it in 5 minutes, maybe you shouldn't have been out in the hall chatting with the lobbyist. Maybe you should have been at your desk. Just asking for the people.
Yep. So there's a minimum amount of time that a vote has to be left open by House rule. I think it's still 2 minutes. Sometimes they drop that to 1, but the idea is you have to give someone a certain amount of time. And I think the 2-minute rule is probably about a good balance. But what I think the whole issue, especially what you've seen in the Senate, it is entirely inappropriate for a presiding officer to hold a vote open, in my view, for an unlimited point of time until the arm twisting gets the votes. That's an absolute invitation for corruption on the scale of which I think we're seeing it now. I think some deals are being made that if the people knew what they were, they'd be truly horrified. But that's my personal point of view as of now. Hopefully we'll get more truth on this later. But the gist of it is, I think an important part of what is it as we actually go into a new era with new legislators who are reform-minded, how can they learn from these things and stop it in the future? And my view is, for the first time, there needs to be a mandatory cap on the amount of time that a vote remains open. And you mentioned 5 minutes. I think a 2 to 5 minute window is perfect, that it can close after 2, but it cannot stay open more than 5 ever. And that, I think, is an important reform that it's going to be important for us to insist on legislators adopting that, because that would stop the unlimited amount of time in which arm twisting can occur.
And I'm going to point something out here. This isn't the first time this happened. I mean, just recently, 2 years ago, the legislature voted on the voucher bill that everybody here knows how much I detest. That vote was left open by the pro tem, Greg Treat, was left open. The vote didn't even start until 8 or 9 or something. And so I know Julia and Jana are on this morning. I hope Jana's still on. Somebody chime in and tell, because sorry, couldn't remember, but it was, I remember we were all on the phone and it was after midnight and it was horrifying. So, okay. So what is it? Type it in. Tell me. Because I thought it was after 8 or something that they started, and then they left it open so long because they were waiting, I think, for Shane Jett to leave, or he had to get a plane or something, or somebody had to get a plane. I don't remember. Anyway, I just remember it being a very similar situation to what we had, and they didn't even close the vote until after midnight, and people were still on the floor. So, Jana, if you can, Julie, if you can remember the exact dates, I'll throw them up. They left it all the way open past 12, past midnight. That one vote. So I've seen it happen before, and it's usually on something contentious that the minions have to go around and twist arms or make deals in order to make that happen. You can't, it's kind of like, did either of your parents ever tell you, you must be back in before midnight? Nothing good ever happens after midnight. To me, mine did. To me, it's kind of like that. You can't leave the vote open. Nothing ever good happens after, a certain amount of time. We should just shut it down.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And then, of course, the big issue that we saw, we have seen this repeatedly throughout the legislative sessions, where they will leave the vote open as long as it takes. And so I think that the idea has been, this really illustrates the point in a way that we can finally say, here's a case in point example. But I'll recall the one when they were passing the tax hikes in 2017, 2018. And they foolishly threw a hotel tax in with the log roll tax package. And those of us who were debating against that tax hike, that gave us a real point to debate against, saying, you're just throwing in a new tax on the hotel industry at the last minute. There's no transparency with this. What are you doing? They passed it in the House anyway. It goes to the Senate. And by then, the hotel industry had engaged in a way that had the bill dead to rights in the Senate, requiring some sort of complicated rules change proposal in the House to unwind it. And there were enough people saying, no, we're not going to suspend that rule, that they didn't have the vote. And as I recall, they needed one more vote. They kept the vote open while they sent the OHP to, I think, Enid to pick up the legislator there and bring him in for the vote, if I recall correctly. And that was just the epic abuse of state resources.
Well, they did the same thing. I heard Senator Pugh was getting, now this may be incorrect, but I did read this in a text stream on X. Capitol Reporter was saying that they were sending the OHP to the airport because Senator Pugh was getting off of a plane and they needed to get him back for the vote.
Yes. And was that flight even scheduled before the vote started? So the idea being, do they really care so much about Chris Kennedy's bill? And what is it they need? What is it they want in those veto overrides that's so important to them that potentially they had a special flight from I don't even know that flight was pre-scheduled to recall a senator from DC to come back to Oklahoma, where OHP would get him to the Capitol stat to be the deciding vote. And if so, who paid for those plane tickets? It just shows you how much is at stake.
Okay, I'm going to stop that there. Julia did chime in and she said, our bill that would have made OSSBA obsolete. They waited until Senator Merrick and Bullard couldn't be there and then they heard it. I remember that, so we didn't have the votes. But the one that they held up was the school choice bill. Yes. So, and I'm going to just posit this right now. And I want us to really, once the interview with Jason's over, we'll have a few minutes to kind of chat about this as all together. But we've seen a session boil down to, and I want us to think on this until this is finished. Okay. You can vote on a bill as many times as you want until the bill gets passed. I mean, 224 showed us that 150%. We can leave the vote open until we twist enough arms to get the vote to pass. Now, I want to ask this, and I want us to talk about that at the end after we've really thought about it. How is that open, transparent government, number one? How are those representatives even representing? Because it's called representative because you're not there on your own because you felt like rolling out of the rack and going up to the Capitol and voting on some bills. You're there because you're representing the people in your district, not the state, not the governor, not the other people in the chamber, the people in your district. How does any of that nonsense fix that? How does that help the people who elected these people? This was the work. After this session was over, I don't see how any of us can call Oklahoma red state. I mean, don't call it that. I'm not going to listen. That's ridiculous. And then certainly, how do we have a government of the people, by the people, for the people? We don't. We have government of the few, for the few, by a bunch of lobbyists. That's it. That's pathetic. That would have been a huge win for education and kids. Yes, the OSSBA bill. Yes, ma'am, it would have. We might have I got it close enough. If it's not transparent, it's as shady as it gets. Oh, no question. And uniparty versus unipeople. Y'all are just putting out fires right and left. It's impossible for good people to predict the actions of evil. I'm praying God sends more angels to fight this madness. And I totally hear you, and I get it. I mean, this is correct. However, we have what we have, and if you believe like I believe, which is where, God puts us here to do these, to try to make things better. I mean, certainly to proselytize in the name of Jesus, but also we're his hands and feet. We have to do things that help make things right, ethically, morally, all of those kinds of things. And that's what I feel like that. I mean, honestly, Lisa, I would prefer at this point in time at my age to putz around on my farm, grow enormous vegetables that nobody's going to eat because all my kids are gone. And just maybe travel a little bit. But for whatever reason, that's not God's plan for me. And I can't do that with a clear conscience and feel good about myself. So this is what I have to do, whether we're putting out fires or chasing fires or whatever. It's just kind of, I think some of us just feel stuck with it. Okay, I'm actually going to have to take them off. This just isn't working. They also stalled to assemble on schedule to hear the turbine set bill. Yeah, setback bill. That's true. HB 2751 in the Senate Energy Committee. That's right. Waited until Senator Jett had to fly out on the day Grant Green said there will be no videoing. The truth is they manipulate the timing like a game of capital chess. I so agree with that. And if this legislation is so important, why are some legislators completely off campus and not in their seats? There you go. I mean, and so, don't forget, like Chris Banning, for example, his son was, I think, in Colorado. I'm not sure. If you're on, Chris, you can tell me. And he had his appendix rupture and he had to go. I mean, there are people that have to go do these things. That's not what Senator Pugh was doing, I heard. But again, I can't report on any, you can't go. And so, according to the grapevine, blah, it doesn't work like that. So, but that's not what I heard. And thank you, Rick West, for watching. And then you can take notes on all the things. You can go back and we'll help you do them all next session. Where are we supposed to be? I'm not sure that I quite get them. Maybe I lost that. I understand your POV. Sorry, I just hate that point of view. But I'm still praying God gets you some slack and gives you some more wins. Well, here's the thing though, Lisa, it'd be us, not just me. I mean, because like I said, I'd be putzing around the farm and, playing with sheep. I don't think I'd be, this isn't like, of all of the things that you want to do in the world, Jenny, what would you like to do? This isn't really on the list. In the old days, political leaders feared what the citizen who elected them and what they might do if they fell out of line. Today, they're only worried about Facebook attacks, to the point, Dorn, that they have to write a bill. What was it? Jason Murphy called it the butthurt senator bill. You can't call me anything on Facebook. It was really tragic. We're on the wrong playing field. When we lead more people to Christ, everyone wins. More kingdom of God, less kingdoms of man. And that's 100%. Julia, I'm not going to argue with you. There is no argument in my perspective to that statement. But I also feel like God calls us all to different jobs and to do different jobs. I'm not that person. That's just not my deal. I'm the person who's going to fight you. That's my deal. So I'm the part of Jesus that turned over the tables in the temple, I guess. I don't know, but I'm just saying, I think we all have our different things. But you're right. The more people we lead to Jesus, the better things, would get. Okay. Back to the video.
That these things would, if they are proven to be true, that these things are even being talked about in order to make Chris Kennedy in the House say, okay, well, here are your bills. Just is it just, you can ask, is it just pride? They want to override the governor so bad? Or is it much, much deeper than that? What was in those bills that made it so important to go to those great lengths, if that is what happened?
Well, and all of the things that we don't know and can't prove right now, notwithstanding, we all here agree that Chris Kennedy writing a bill, being the main author of a bill for which he would somehow have, I'm not even going to say benefit necessarily, but he definitely has, he's in the National Guard. How do you do that ethically and nobody challenge him on the floor and say, why are we even voting on this, y'all? I mean, seriously, this is an ethically challenged bill from number one, from just the first point off the starting line. I mean, that's I think where the frustration for me, and I'm sure probably other people, I mean, Michael's been uncharacteristically quiet here with those things, but I'm gonna say that's right, Michael?
Yeah, well, and I'd like to see, where's like some of the whistleblowers who's getting their arm twisted, Jason. I'd like to just see them come forward and say, hey, this is what's happening behind the scenes.
Yep.
Well, and that's interesting that we get there, and then our friend Rebuke Woke says, why don't our conservative legislators talk about it, what's causing the legislators' corrupted behavior? The cause for so much of this corruption is for new laws to be passed to meet the UN inclusive, blah, blah, and build out smart cities. And who knows? There's so much going on at this point. I'm not even sure that that we all know where all the lines go. We just know that the basics, right? Oh, and that's a good point, Julia. That's a very good point. So yeah, I think that's my question is why, and that's why I'm trying to get Senator Jett to come on, because I'd like him to talk about this kind of thing, because we're going to talk about that in just a second. So I don't really want to get into that. But the point of the matter is if you're a legislator on the floor and this comes up and you don't hit the button, during question time, question for the author, aren't you in the National Guard? Question, why is it that you are the lead author on a bill about the National Guard? I'm not clear as to why this doesn't happen.
It's questions that if the press were doing its job, they would focus on the fact who flipped during that vote, and why.
Yeah.
And what were the circumstances of the Pew issue, the Senator Pew issue? What the press would be asking this, but what I think the job of a good press person would be is to go to the senators that flipped and put it over the top and just say, what was the discussion? Why did you change? And then not accept I looked at it and deliberated and talked to someone in, ABC agency of state government, and I just feel like I was wrong. You got to push beyond that and say, were you promised any outcome? Put them on the record denying that, or at least talking around it, because when they talk around it, Yeah. And then even those that were being lobbied heavily, why they need to be talked to. So if you looked at I think it was the Saturday Oklahoman, the front page picture was Chuck Hall, the appropriations chair, rubbing his eyes. It was captioned by the Oklahoman as he's trying to switch Regina Goodwin, the senator from Tulsa's vote. She didn't switch. They captured Hall looking very frustrated at the time and making it's like, okay, why aren't they asking Goodwin? What was he talking to you about? Why aren't they asking Hall? How were you trying to change your mind? Were you making promises? see if they'll talk, see if they'll go on the record, see how they respond to these things. This is what the corporate press should be doing, because they're the ones with the primary standing to do these things. And then we could at least have that on the record. I think that's probably, from a black pill perspective, the worst part about this is that there's always been this element of corruption. The legislature, the independent media, and the grassroots network are shining more light on it than ever before. But I think if this was Gaylord's Oklahoman in the 70s, 80s, 60s, I think that 5-hour vote would be front page. I think who flipped and why, what was promised would be the question of the day. Yeah. And it just isn't.
Yeah. So that was the Chris Kennedy bill. And, you know, I'm sure you're going to write about it. I'll write about it. Once all of this dies down, we'll go back and dissect it and go through it. But then we had another vote going on that had Senator Racino involved. And that was yet another one where we seem to find our lawmakers in the position of being ethically challenged. So what was the situation there?
So this was the legislation where there was, I guess, talk that something big and scary would be happening that last day, that Thursday. And it took until about 5-something for that resolution to be filed and for us to find out what was in fact being planned. And it was the decapitation of an agency head. Basically, the legislature by resolution saying the mental health director is gone. No due process, no specific opportunities for her to answer to those charges that were laid out in that resolution. It was file the resolution, approve the resolution. And I think in quick order, that's exactly what they did. I call it the midnight execution. Whether or not the charges were accurate, whether or not the legislature should take that action is absolutely beside the point. It should not have happened that way. It needed transparency and due process. No state government is going to run effectively when an agency director thinks, you know, if I volunteer for this complicated mission at a high-profile state agency, I could myself get decapitated with just a couple hours notice at night with no ability to defend myself. That sends a chilling message to all of state government.
I want to say this, he keeps saying decapitated, and I was kind of laughing and I was going to say something. I mean, that is the correct term, but we're not talking about having her head removed. We're talking about the head of the agency being removed. It's still fine to use that terminology, but I kept laughing about it. So I was like, I probably better say something. Well, and I'm just curious. I honestly, I don't know. Can she, because there was no due process in her firing and the legislature did it, can she sue the state for?
She could, and maybe should, but
because I didn't know if there were special rules that the legislature did it or something. You had to just suck it up. I mean, I really honestly don't know, but it seems to me if we're going to, and I think pretty much everybody knows I'm embroiled in a lawsuit with state over being fired. So from a non-paying position. So I think that there is a certain amount of due process that employees anywhere have to expect, and certainly state employees employed on the taxpayer dime should expect at least some kind of due process. I don't even know. My confusion came in, Jason, because I didn't even understand how the legislature could do that. Not even, I mean, so it's a how, but then obviously there's the why, but then do you see what I'm saying? I mean, there were too many questions for me to even process that, actually.
Yeah, and it's because it's so unprecedented. So I would argue rather strenuously that one area the legislature has dropped the ball is on its impeachment powers. So when the Supreme Court of the state made the unthinkable ruling in 2020 that verification of absentee ballot signatures was like not allowed, to me that was, let's talk impeachment, but let's do it through due process. And the legislature just hasn't done that because I think it's a uniparty and they're all playing a big game. Somehow, in this case, the legislature decided to enter into an arena that I think is pretty unprecedented. I may be wrong. I cannot manage to think to myself when I can point to precedent for what they did that night. And because of the unprecedented nature of it, we're still doing discovery on the logistics and all of that, as far as was this something they could do, which presumably you do want the legislature to have this type of power, but it has to be done right. It has to be done with due process. It has to be done in a way that builds confidence in the legislature and the process. And the fact that this discussion is completely missing in the legislative arena and in the media arena, I think that what does it say when the legislature files a charging document, after business hours, and at midnight they're acting on it? What does that do to state government? Everyone in that agency, whether they like the director or not, what are they thinking as far as their job security? As far as
what does that even do to the people? I mean,
yeah, it's chilling. And then to where I think you were asking me to go, the conflict of interest, the theme of today's podcast really was the fact that the Senate author of that, his wife clearly has some type of relationship with the agency, an employment or a contractual relationship that appears to be a proven fact at this point, meaning that just like Kennedy should not have been voting, in my view, on the military department proposal, Racino, the Senate author, should not have been voting and certainly should not have been sponsoring the decapitation bill. And so,
well, and that was the Department of Mental Health. So let's go back, because I think some things we're kind of doing inside baseball here on, and I want to make sure everybody understands. So the bill by Senator Racino that came in was to remove the head of the mental health department that was appointed by Governor Stitt. Oh gosh, it's been within the year, hasn't it been, guys?
I think it was last year.
Okay. And she, I will say this, I mean, she did not have any background in state agency. And she did not, I don't even think she had a background in mental health. She was a younger girl, and I've forgotten what her background was. But the point was that she was an appointee of Governor Stitt. And because the Department of Mental Health has had all these problems, if you've been reading anything at all, you've found that, well, they asked Cindy Byrd, the state auditor, to go do an audit of the Department of Mental Health. She found them $20 million in the hole. And I haven't read the whole audit, so I'm not going to go out on that limb and say something I don't know anything about. But I do know that she did the audit. I do know that they were found to have been significantly, I'm not going to say underfunded, because that, I think that's a big fat lie. They were in the hole on their budget. And so Stitt had appointed somebody new to come in and kind of right size the agency, look into actually what was going on. And it was this woman that was fired from her position by the state legislature in a vote on the floor on the last day, written through a resolution written by a man whose wife worked at the Department of Mental Health. Did I cover everything?
Yep. Okay. I think you've got it.
Okay.
There are two narratives here, right? The governor, I think, not to speak for the governor, but my take on his position is he appointed a change agent for that agency. Think of it like Trump appointing an Elon Musk, coming from a complete outsider perspective, come in here and fix this thing. And the agency, the people inside the agency didn't quite cater to that. And there was politics afoot, and apparently the Racino, who chairs the relevant committee, has managed to, in some way, shape, or form, bring this question up. His wife is engaged in a relationship with that agency that suggests she's going to, rather fair or not to her, always have that question over her. Imagine being her direct line authority, whether a contract officer or supervisor, whatever her relationship is, and realizing her relationship with the senator who's decapitating your agency head. That is a stunning conflict that would suggest everything that's wrong with government, and that is that politics is going to drive, clearly, human nature being what it is, the conduct within that agency. And so the question is, do these types of relationships put it in a way so that agency is impossible to reform because the political element is always going to be there? Did a privileged provider get their check a day late? Well, I know how all the lawmakers can show off for that provider and ensure their continued political support. They can, with no due process, flex their muscle and show just how powerful they are at midnight, and without giving due process to that agency director, decapitate the agency. And you think about that approach, if you really let that sink in, you'll realize just how big of a conflict this is. And most importantly, just how bad it is that what we're talking about right now inside the Capitol is Greek. They don't think about due process. They don't think about appearance. And most of the corporate media has let them get away with that.
Well, and it's like we were talking before we came on today. Does anybody know what ethics are anymore? Yeah. Do you even know what it is, people? Do you even... And then even if you know, do you care? And then if you care, do you stand up and say, this is all ridiculous? What are you people thinking? Okay, so before we get into Jenny acting like a crazy person again, I wanted to point out Roberta's comment. They turned the whole thing into an attack on Jet after he called out the conflict of interest. And that's really super important. And we need to talk about that a little bit more, Roberta, here in just a little bit. This was a great comment, John. One's not even able to do a recall petition on these people who are pulling these stunts at the Capitol. And it's not, I guess, because some ethics aren't illegal. The ones that the unethical garbage that they're doing right now isn't illegal. And Roberta reminded me she'd been there for 18 months. This was a good one too, Dana. Josh West probably shouldn't have been the House author since his wife owns a mental health clinic that may or may not be affected by the issues at the Department of Mental Health. So I went back and I looked, and this was Senate Concurrent Resolution 13 filed by Senator Paul Rosino and Representative Josh West. Copies of I'm reading from the Oklahoman, I'm sorry. Copies of the resolution were distributed in the Senate chamber about 7 p.m. on Thursday, February 29th. Remember, that was the last day. About 3 hours later, the Senate voted 43-1. Remember, Shane Jett was the only no, to remove Commissioner Allie Friesen from her post. The House followed with an 81-5 vote around midnight. By law, the legislature must adjourn its current session by 5 p.m. Friday. So they still had time to do this. None of this kabuki theater crap had to happen at, in the wee hours. Stitt appointed Friesen in January 2024. The agency is subject to multiple investigations. The budget shortfall is $30 million. I'm sorry, 30, not 20. $10 million does make a difference, even in some circles. The resolution said the legislature has a right under law to remove Friesen from her post with a 2/3 vote. The vote landed 1 week after an audit conducted by the state auditor found the department staff were made to sign non-disclosure agreements and were discouraged from cooperating with the investigators who were trying to unravel the cause of the agency's financial crisis. Oklahoma Attorney General Gittner Drummond has called for Friesen to be removed, so we know that she should be staying there automatically. Automatically, we know that. Here's the conundrum. They should be able to run legislation and vote on things that they have experience in. However, the wicked ones, fair enough, Jules, just want to take their neighbor's money to put it in their own pockets. How do you fix that? That is an excellent thought. And because we've been friends so long and we share a similar brain, I was thinking that very same thing when we were interviewing Jason yesterday morning. And I'm like, but you want people to have some experience in these things, because when they have experience, they don't get snowed under by creepy employees at a state agency, right? Because they kind of have an idea of what's going on. But then how do you separate that from, I'm going to take advantage of this situation, and oh my goodness, if we do this, then I can get the commissioner to create, I'm not saying this happens, so we're not doing that. I can, however, suggest or, consider things. So how do you do that? I mean, that's, I don't know, Jules. I mean, you got me on that one, because I had the same thought. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I guess I just keep praying that people are going to be ethical people. I don't know. If one director of an agency gets fired, has if one director of an agency gets fired, has every director over all agencies been screened using the same criteria? I think I know what you're saying, Dorn, and that's a good point. I don't know, but don't forget, we have rules, agency rules, and we have state law that, I mean, because our state law is like 270,000 pounds worth of writing, there's got to be something to cover this. I think that what we do is we just decide that whatever we think at the time is going to works. And I've seen it happen many a time in many a state agency. And that's the problem. But if somebody doesn't, like, Senator Jett, stand up and say, hold on a minute, blah, blah, blah. Senator Rosino, doesn't your wife actually work for the Department of Mental Health? If people aren't doing this, what do you do? I mean, so there's another aspect to this, because you've mentioned politics numerous times. When you did have a legislator who was brave enough to stand up, and this was Senator Shane Jett, in the face of, I think, 58 members of the Senate just staring at him, he basically, got up there and said, hey, what are we doing here? And then he said, the author of the bill, his wife works at the state agency that we're voting on right now. He brings this up, and then what happens? Oh my goodness. The tissues had to come out. There was, people were having to get donuts to sit on because their bottoms were so hurt. It was unbelievably disgusting to watch that. How dare you bring his wife into that? You can't bring we don't talk about wives or families here. But it was like third grade. How do you explain that? Instead of saying quietly, calmly, guys, I just don't think, like Jet was trying to do. This is a bad idea. Look at what we're doing here. Then you had all of these people coming unglued. Like, it was gross.
So I think that takes us back to the question you asked me earlier. If I were in the legislature, would I speak up? Would I say, hey, Representative Kennedy, should you maybe be doing constitutional privilege on this, and at least make them talk about it? And I think the point I would make on that is that the answer is yes, that would be the right thing to do. And we saw Jet do that in the Senate as it related to Rosino and his decapitation resolution. No due process. Hey, by any chance, does your wife work for the agency? And I think pretty much took asking that question, and it was on. And what you saw was, and this happens in the legislative environment, and it's how people are manipulated easily. And that is, override the governor. He's awful. He's attacking one of our members. we've got to go tribal on this. We've got to defend our tribe no matter what. And then people's brains turn off. And this is when there are a few alphas who are working the system, and then the rest are mostly lemmings and followers. So you had a senator, was it Gillespie, say, I cried today. Had she been crying because the female agency head, in the spirit of female power, where the female legislators are constantly defending each other and female in general in the political area, was she crying because there was a decapitation going on with no fair process whatsoever? Whether or not that action needed to eventually happen, I'm not saying the merits of the charges. I'm just saying we don't know because they weren't in any form of due process given a hearing. Was she realizing how egregious this was? No. She was crying purportedly because the wife of the senator who had the very bad judgment to sponsor that resolution, given that relationship, his relationship was simply being called into question. Now that is where emotions come in, and that's where people's brains stop working if they were working in the first place, and they just stop thinking, hey, I am a senator of this state. At the very least, I should understand and insist on both propriety of appearance and due process. And by the way, I'm very upset that another senator and a committee chairman has put us all in this position, because Stitt was right. And that should have been the motivator. But somehow the alphas in the Senate, who are controlling opinion and motivating to a certain action in the emotion of what is the end of session, had that chamber so convinced that their chamber was under attack. Not mad at Kennedy for holding up the whole legislative process and reportedly doing all this, holding up the legislative process and all of their bills hostage. No, mad at the governor and any of their other fellow colleagues who would probably just ask the question, hey, by the way, is your wife really, have a relationship with this agency you're seeking to decapitate? And so Shane Jett, because he had the courage to ask a question and make a point or two, he became the target of their ire, and few were willing to stand with him. And that's how bad it is in the process. Jett was the hero on that day. The villains were the ones who didn't understand the concept of conflict of interest, didn't understand the concept of due process, didn't understand the fact that working past midnight is really something you shouldn't be doing. All of human experience has taught us that. There's a reason your parents teach you that. Any of that could have been done the next day. So, and then of course, all the arm twisting on the previous vote. The villains are those who don't understand just how bad all of this is. Jett was a hero for getting to the floor and having the courage to point it out. And then, of course, the verdict on the Senate is that the Oklahoman today, I think, is still saying that Paxton's saying, he might be disciplined. So they might somehow, one senator from a district totally separate from Jett's district seems to think he has the right to, in some shape, form, or manner, and the authority in some shape, form, or manner to possibly discipline Jett for daring to ask a question and make a point or two.
Well, I'll tell you what, if that happens, I think there should be an absolute public outcry from every quarter, because I think one of the first times you came on the show, Jason, you talked about caucus and how damaging caucus is. Because, just the bottom line, just the idea of caucus is damaging. I have a senator. I have a representative. My senator and my representative were elected by me and my fellow citizens in our area. Why would my representative go sit in a room with all the other representatives so they could sit down and go, yes, we're going to do this. No, we're not going to do that. Yes, we're going. We don't elect a body. We elect individuals. Our entire system is based on individual liberty. How have we become this groupthink, socialized, I don't know, I'm going to say bad words and I don't, let's not go there. But I mean, and then people don't quite understand. And honestly, I think it's because they pull this nonsense. And even people like me and a group of, other ladies that are involved, and we, have some group chats, even they were like, what is going on? Why is this happening? And I didn't know, I don't even know what to say. I mean, the frustration is not mild.
That's good. That will inspire action. And I don't think you're the only one feeling this. And I think probably a lot of your people that are watching right now feel exactly like you do. And someone in this audience might just say, you know what, I'm going to send an email to that email address, jason@oklahomastatecapital.com. And I'm going to say, help me get involved, help me run for office this time, and help me make a difference. And
okay, well, I'm looking on my calendar. And I think on next Wednesday, we're having an entire podcast dedicated to that, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, and I think we're having some other people come on. We've got to go back over that, but yes, we're going to be doing that. So again, I think probably one of the most important aspects of what you do and Michael and I do and all of this is to educate people to look down on that and tease apart the confusion and narrow in on what the issue is. I mean, isn't that kind of hopefully what we're all trying to do here?
It's exactly what these types of podcasts are doing. They're creating a super group of people who know the truth. And that's really, if you think about it, sort of the neat aspect to the fact that the corporate media won't cover or even explain these things. It means that those who are watching this know something that the average Oklahoman reader, the average TV news consumer, even the ones who are looking at the in-depth stuff with the insiders writing the blogs, like the non-docs, those are great resources, but and they'll let you see some of the in-depth specifics, but they're not in a position where they can explain what we're explaining here because they need those relationships. That's my opinion. And so the people watching here and in all the other independent media from X to Substack that are talking about it, they're learning things that the general populace hasn't learned. And then they're forming that group that then will run for office, and in the process of either running for office or helping others run for office, will inform the wider public. And that's how the movement will build and build. And there's so much potential, from initiative to referendum petitions to certainly having an ability to reform the legislature, to making a difference in statewide and congressional races. All of that energy that is building and building is going to keep happening. And the ones who are following sources like this one will have the knowledge to make it happen. And that's why it's such an incredible time when you can go to Rumble and you can go and become more informed than anyone who is paying to read the corporate media or watch it or listen to it, if that's even an option for the most part. But the idea is this is transformative and we're just getting started.
So I know, or I feel like, I can't know, but I feel as though people are thinking, okay, well, we got out from under that and we know that some bad things happened and, we're trying to figure out what's going on, but, they're not going to be back in session until next February. So I guess, we have to do things over this space from now until next February. We need to be doing things. What are those things that we need to be doing?
So again,
I mean, we're going to be doing them here, but I want you to explain to people what they can be doing. It's not just a dead space.
Yeah, I'll go back to the pitch I always do, and I hope I'm not overdoing this, but the thing that I'll talk to you probably about to some extent on next Wednesday is that filing day candidates, those who start to run as a filing day in April of next year, more likely than not, when I talk to them, I let them know you're building a foundation. You're probably not going to be able to win because there's not time to do that broader education of the public that we were talking about. The ones who have a chance to be in the next legislature have to start this summer. They have to take the energy from understanding what's happened right now, all the different things, the abuses we've seen in the last 4 months, and channel that to either recruitment of candidates or running directly. And that has to start now, really, that organizational process. And there needs to be someone in every competitive House district, for sure, as an example, that is willing to adopt their district and to say, if my legislator is one of those green button tapping lemmings that's made this all possible, then I need to adopt this House district and either be a candidate or find a candidate, maybe multiple, who will educate the public on these issues, hopefully take the no lobbyist money pledge as well. That's a very important component of this. And we'll make that difference. That's the way that a difference is made. And I'll point to one aspect of this, just so I think this is very important. And that is, we've had a lot of wins this time, I think, on surveillance state issues.
No, I agree with you 100%. I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you.
Yes. And those wins, I think, were because candidates have already built a foundation in past years on this. The big one I'd point to is they didn't even try the track and tax plan at all this time. And that was the plan by which they would require you to report all the miles you drive and would tax you based on that. And they were running full on with this. That pilot.
But Jason, how do we get, my roads are bad. I have potholes. Nothing is happening. How do I, I wanted to stop and say that, and I'm sorry to stop your forward momentum on that, but I do believe that one of the biggest things that all of us need to be doing this summer is getting people to understand when they say things like, but my roads, and so this must be good because my roads are a problem. We've got to make people understand what function of government is. So you have this arm of government. What is it supposed to do? You have this arm of government. What is it supposed to do? I think we've got to go back to even educating people about that, because I don't think they even know the difference between what a county commissioner does versus your city council member or even your school board member, Michael. I mean, I don't know that people know these things.
So part of the running for office is the opportunity to educate people. And so the example on track and tax I'll point to, and then I'll answer that question, is that I think it was 2022, Carmen Greider ran for House District 31.
Yep.
And I think she was the first candidate to say, hey, they're doing this track and tax. We've got to stop this. Elect me, I'll stop it. And I think she was set to win that election going against an incumbent who was pretty moderate, Gary Mize. Mize drops out. They throw in a ringer, Colin Duell. And it made it a lot harder on Carmen, who still almost won, but she didn't. But part of her process was to educate the wider public on this issue. And of course, that's what, the bureaucrats are saying, unless we go to Orwell, we're not going to have roads anymore. And of course, the answer to that is usually easy. The legislature raids motor vehicle funds to many millions of dollars every year. And before we should ever entertain doing things differently, we need to make sure that we elect legislators who will say, if you're paying motor vehicle taxes, maybe those should go to roads. It's an easy answer, but most people will immediately agree with that. And that's the opportunity the legislature has missed in the last few years when Biden inflation and COVID money drove up the state budget. Legislators went on a spending spree. They're spending more than ever. Well, instead of doing that, maybe they could have programmed the motor vehicle monies for roads. And that basically solves that problem for a very long time. But of course, that's not something legislators do. They don't make those hard decisions yet. And so that was much easier to float out an idea. Maybe we should just send you a bill for every mile you drive and track you everywhere you go. Let's try that. Now, it was because that Carmen Greider ran that issue, I think, and then other candidates picked it up, that the message got out district by district by district, where you had in every part of the state potentially legislators having to answer the charge that they were for that, which they did vote for that plan. And there was lots of obfuscation on that, but where they would try to explain it away as something that it wasn't. But the gist of it was one candidate in one district picked that up. And today, this was the year they were supposed to make that program bigger and wider in its application. And as the session almost got underway, ODOT made it clear, if I remember right, they're not even going to try it. It was dead. But this was their year for it. The non-election year when they could have pushed it past the legislature and given a year before the people had a referendum, they did not even try. I give the credit for that specifically to that one brave candidate in House District 31 who did not win that year, but she campaigned on it. She got the word out. It got out to other candidates, and it got out to it got out in a way that I think killed the issue. And so that's why my favorite method of choice for educating the wider public on this is to go door to door to door, educating and saying, by the way, vote for me and I'll do it differently. And that's what it takes. It just takes enough people in enough districts. We need 80 people to step up in 80 different House districts. Well, 70. You've got 10 good guys there that you shouldn't chunk.
Oh yeah, let's not throw out the good ones.
Yes. 70 people stepping up in 70 different House districts changes the world. And that's all we need. 70 people to say, for the next year, I'm going to educate my House district, build a network in my House district, win or lose. And I might just keep going door to door until I'm that legislator and I can go in and fix it. That's what we need.
I mean, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's, it's like when I was running for school board. I mean, people just had no idea. I mean, they literally just have no idea what's happening in their schools, let alone the legislature.
Yep. It's the campaign, the door-to-door campaign that allows the people to learn. They're not going to get it in the press, and then the independent media doesn't reach a lot of the normies just yet, but it reaches the ones who matter, the ones who will step up and then go educate the wider public.
Well, and like Jason said, we have to start right now, whether you're the person running or not. We have to at least go find the person that is going to be willing to run. Now we can't wait till December until whoever it's going to be, because like Jason said, it's too late. I mean, I've seen that multiple times just with helping with all these school board campaigns. You get someone literally the day of the last day of registration, then, it's almost just too late to get going.
Yeah, exactly. If the candidate waits until filing day, it's not impossible, especially in the more urban districts where you can reach people quickly.
Yeah.
But more likely than not, if you send me that email and it's April and you're like, should I run? And there's no one else running, I might say, sure, but understand this. We're building a foundation for the next 2.5 months.
Yeah.
You've got to come back a year later and do it right. And so that's why starting now is the right way to do it. It's not to say that I'll discourage someone from doing it on filing day. If no one else has stepped up, yes, step up. But if you really want to do it right, the time is now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the bottom line is, because I look at, we haven't talked about Tom Gannon request in terms of surveillance. I mean, honestly, I think Tom Gannon's interim study on flock cameras that Michael and I did a whole, show and a half or 2 shows on. I think that was so informative, and, we helped get the word out on that so well that I think there wasn't a lot of ability for them to really get their hooks in there, because I think people were already primed, at the pump to go, now we heard what Gann said in the interim study. So I do think that there's some of that. And I'm very grateful for Tom Gannon and the numbers of people who stood up against, this whole idea of ALPRs. I always hate to use flock because it's a trademark name. but automatic license plate readers, ALPRs, is what we're talking about, and the tracking that they do through the through police departments and OHP and all of those other things. So yes, we have to be very grateful for the legislators that we have that are there educating people on these topics while they're there. But then, yes, I agree. We've got to get, if we don't concentrate on getting people who are not going to just be pushing the green button all the time, then we have to find people who aren't going to push the green button all the time. That's what we have to do. And by the way, you have a project that you're working on, Jason, that before we sign off of here, because it's about time, but before we sign off of here, you need to just kind of tease a little bit, I think.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we've talked about it here before, but it's it's a lazy rule of thumb. It needs to be paired up with other analysis and scorecards, but it's the easiest way to quickly identify if the legislature is courageous enough to, from time to time, at least stand up to leadership, vote the right way on bills. And that's just the measurement of how often do they hit the green button. And so we saw that Kevin Stitt film, and I think he provided some analysis, which is like, a lot of these bills, they're just not good bills or not needed bills, one or the other. I'm going to start vetoing them. And I bet if you could give him a time machine, he would like to go back 6 years from now and have that attitude from the start. But he was new. Better late than never. I like it. And he's absolutely right. But it makes the point that if a legislator is voting green 90% of the time or more, then he's signing off on, at best, a lot of busy work that's just costing taxpayer money and employing a whole industry of special interest. And at worst, which is the reality, also co-signing, number one, all the procedural things that suspend the rules and allow the chaos to happen and establish a speaker who has all the power, and then basically allowing the bad system that we're talking about to exist in the first place. But he's also just not being independent minded. And so the capital conformity tracker is a way of saying, here's the ones who are voting 90% or more. We call them the lemmings. And that's the vast majority. Here are those who we call the mediocrities. They're the ones who are, they're the ones who basically, they cast the right vote sometimes on final passage, but oftentimes they'll enable the bad system. And there's a group of them there. And then those are the ones who 80 to 90% of the time are hitting the green button. They're the mediocrities. Some good, some bad, probably enabling the system. And then the ones who vote green less than 80% of the time, as a lazy rule of thumb, these are the 10 good guys. And so I'll be releasing that index here in the next few days at OklahomaStateCapitol.com, first to the paying subscribers, and then a few days later to everyone. And I think that as a rule of thumb, this will allow you to quickly identify who those good guys are and maybe who the mediocrities are, the ones who maybe they have hope, maybe they're moving in the right way. Maybe they don't deserve a challenge on a case-by-case basis, but at least identify who they are. And then obviously the lemmings will be easily identified by that as well. Some, hit their green button almost, 98% of the time. But the gist of the takeaway from the report, though, is a really neat thing. And it's something that's very encouraging because in the past few years, the amount of Republicans voting green is about 93, 94%, and it does not deviate much from that. What this report will show, believe it or not, that this year, largely in part because of the new freshman representatives, who half of them are not lemmings, 50% not lemmings, 89% of the time. That's huge. That is a big, big drop. And so that line is going to go steady for the last few years, and then it just drops off a cliff. And that means that the system is opening up. We're making progress. We can see it. It might be more corrupt than ever, but the reason for that is that potentially leadership is living in fear and pushing too hard because they know what's coming and they sense it. And because of the independent media, the grassroots, and those freshmen, those courageous people that went in and held their own, again, they split 50-50. Not lemming versus lemming, half of them. Yeah. Incredible. And so that's what the report will show. And it's something that's very encouraging. Courage is contagious. We need that contagion to spread to all districts.
Yeah.
And we need people in your audience to see themselves in that next class of freshmen, reinforcing the courageous ones who went in this time. And if they keep splitting 50-50, we're going to win the day quickly. And that's what's encouraging. We'll see how that goes. It doesn't mean that 50-50 split will stay when they're sophomores or anything like that, but it's very encouraging.
Well, Jason, I appreciate you. Thanks again.
Thanks.
All right. So that was our interview with Jason that we did yesterday. He made some really good points. I want to go back and talk about a couple of the comments that we had. They should consider, and I agree with Julie on this too, they should consider the people in their district as their peers, not the other elected officials. Lobbyists and Main Street media at all treat them as if they're elite, superior to their actual peers. The widow egos like that, and that allows the lobbyists to manipulate them. Their neighbors that elect them treat them like the regular old people that they are. I do think there is the ego stroking is problematic. I mean, not all people, but it tends to work on lots of people. And yes, every level of government feeds into the UN agenda. And I'm not going to argue that. We had roads before. We had government building roads. Stop being addicted to government being a solution for anything. Oh, if only we could. The left depends on people not understanding government, which is why the argument about the history standards. Who do you see having a raging baby fit about the history standards? I'm opting out. I'm taking my kids out. Blah, blah, blah. The left doesn't want people to know anything. And the ones that don't get it and just think they're fighting for their parental rights are the useful idiots that we are so overly populated with in so many areas. Hold on. Hold on. I missed some people. People don't know what's going on and most don't care. They'll tell you it doesn't even affect me. And that's a huge problem. Jim Shaw did the very same thing. Nobody discussed wind turbines until Jim ran. And I think back in 2017, Dorn, there was a huge kind of backlash against wind turbines in 2017 because we were giving out so many tax credits. And since 2017, I haven't heard anything like that talked about until Jim Shaw showed up. So yes. You hear it so often. What are you going to do different? Well, you give your spiel and then they say, I've heard that before and have yet to see it done. People have been lied to so much that people are leery of those running for office. I'm not going to disagree with you, John, but I am going to posit this. Did they even know how government works well enough to be able to make those statements? Because I get it that people are frustrated and I just don't know what's going on. And well, if I just elect this, that doesn't fix it. And this is what we have so many ancillary issues going on. We have a huge problem with this right now in our state legislature. Mary, I don't know if she's still on, but Mary has talked about this before. I think we're going to talk about it upcoming. So many people who were legislators turn around and suddenly become lobbyists, and they're right back up there at the Capitol. Kevin Wallace has been at the Capitol. I don't know why I'm having Mark McBride has been up at the Capitol. Our former pro tem has been up at the Capitol. Apparently all lobbying. McCourtney's a registered lobbyist for sure. I haven't gone back to check the other ones. How can you do that? How do you just leave legislative office and then bada bing, you're a lobbyist making money, pushing a perspective? So I think we have so many problems. We have such a revolving door of, who runs our broadband agency in Oklahoma. Number one, why do we have a broadband agency? That was growing government. Thank you for that, Governor Stitt. But who runs our broadband agency, a former representative, who are on the higher education board, former representatives. It's just, you get out and then they stick you back in different places. And that's how we get the swamp. I mean, that's the classic definition of the swamp. I leave government, I get back in another unelected way. That's called a bureaucrat. And that's how this works. That's how things don't change. So even if I'm elected to go serve in the House of Representatives, I can do what Jim Shaw, Molly Jenkins, and so many of them have done. And if Tom Gann, Rick West, stand up and say, or just push the no button, dink, 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 dink. You can do that. But the problem is, and that's good, and we should do that. But the problem is, it doesn't counteract all of the yucky garbage that's going on, the people who are still involved. And then you have the people in leadership who have the people that under them that they pick themselves, their advisors, who are 15 and 16. I'm being sorry. I mean, that was condescending. Are very young people coming out of colleges that have been groomed for this particular thing, that think in a specific way. I mean, it is a very multi-tiered problem that unfortunately the only solution isn't just I'm going to elect somebody new. That doesn't solve, unfortunately, the problem. So I mean, I totally get it. West strategy, not sure what that's about. I'm sorry, Gracie. I would love to run for a seat somewhere, but the skeletons in my closet, they would run their ink dry. Or do I just run on that very platform that I'm like most and work like most people and work from my lessons learned? I think people do get that. I mean, but then, Dorn, I don't know if this helps or hinders. Think about the fact that we had two huge ethical issues on the last day of the Senate. Two huge ethical issues. And yet they're going to dig up garbage on your background that happened long time ago. I mean, you got to put these things in perspective. A guy, that's great. Well, what are you doing, Mr. Man?
I just had a minute. I was watching that, but I want to make a comment on what Dorn just
said.
No,
you can't just get in at the end and make a comment. You have to come in at the beginning.
Hey, I was there in spirit.
Hang on one second. Mary says the legislator to lobbyist funnel is concerning, especially since term limits in 2010. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. We've got a couple more on here, but go ahead, Michael.
Anyway, I was just going to tell Dorn, that of course they're going to bring up whatever they can. Like when I ran, they literally went and got my wife's emails that she sent into the school board, and they plastered them all over the internet. And yeah, my wife was absolutely hammering teachers and administrators. They blamed it all on me. They said I was crazy, this, that, but it doesn't matter. That was, I can't tell you how many people said, I'm glad that you guys sent those emails in. I'm glad you did all that. They just showed me, you're a real person just like us. You're not, whatever. So I would say, doesn't even matter. They're going to lie either way, whether you have skeletons or not. They're going to make stuff up in one way or another. If you're a good guy going up against one of their establishment bad guys, they're gonna just lie. It doesn't even matter. They're gonna lie and do all kinds of stuff. I mean, there were so many lies told about me and my family, my wife and my kids, and that's just basic school board. But not to scare anybody off, because I take it as a badge of honor that's how scared. That's the lengths they had to go to try to keep me out of that school board seat.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, it's very true. People don't want change. They're scared of change. They want to hear what you want to hear, not the truth, because most of the time that will cause change. I do think there's some of that, John. I'm not kidding. The people running for office don't know how see, and then I do think there's that problem too. So if you get somebody in who's kind of this, ruddy-faced, I've never done anything like this before, but I can take on this challenge kind of a thing. I mean, Jim Shaws are miles and miles between. I mean, Jim Shaws don't come around like, that's that guy's like, I would say a fluke, but he would argue with me and say, Jesus, gets in there and help, and which is, I'm sure that that's true, but I'm just saying, so many people who are just new at this, they get in there, that they get their arms twisted. Somebody says, well, but this is the way we always do it, because that's my favorite one, and they use that stupid line, but we've always done it like this. So you've always done it like that, but then you don't know if there's like an administrative rule against it. You just do it like that. I mean, okay.
Well, why are we in the situation we're in? Because we're just doing how these guys want it to be done. That's just how you do it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I was going to go on, but I won't. They swear to God they'll uphold the Constitution, but they don't even know what's in either the Oklahoma or the U.S. Constitution. I don't know. Most people know what's in the Oklahoma Constitution. That thing's kind of a pain. Thankful for term limits. Unfortunately, Oklahoma now has lame duck damage to deal with. Grifting on the way out. That's funny, because how many times, Michael, have we talked about term limits? And I used to say the people are your term limits. Right. I mean, because if you get a good person in there, you don't want to have to get them out because of term limits. But then on the other hand, look at our state senators. They got in there and they can't get out.
Yeah.
Nothing that you do there's no shoehorn that's big enough. They get in there and you can't get them out.
Yeah.
And then of course,
you see that's the real problem at the federal level. You have these career, and I mean long-term career politicians that just, you can't get them. They have too much money. You can't get them out of office now.
Yeah. They have a war chest that's going to run everybody out of town. So they just sit on it and go, beat me. I mean, it's just and so really, if the system were going to work properly, the people would be the term limits. You suck, correct. We're getting you out. But then there have been too many ways that our elected officials have found to ingratiate themselves into their positions. I mean, my goodness, look at their they give themselves raises all the time. They have an actual, like, I don't think James Langford's actually ever held a job except at Falls Creek. I think his job has always been government.
Serving the people. His job is serving the people, Jenny.
Yeah. Yeah. Serving
He's
the
a
people
humble
on the
servant
taxpayer
of the
dime.
people of Oklahoma.
Well, I mean, we're laughing, but it is kind of funny. It's like, yeah, I get paid by the taxpayer to serve them, but I'm not really serving them. I'm kind of doing what I think I should do based upon the fact that all my buddies around me are telling what to do. And Mary's right about that. I'm like 100% on this. It's why the lame duck legislature is suddenly forbidden to talk of conflicts of interest, and families are off limits. I mean, it's term limits. Let them term out. Then put in a clause after the term limit out of letting them run again. If they were good, then let the people vote them in again. I mean, I see some of that too. I don't know that, but what we talked about today. Oh, before we get off, I'm going to plug this book again. Okay, so this book is Ethics, an Early American Handbook, a reprint of an 1890 original. And basically it says that, as confirmed by President George Washington, a good moral character is the first essential. It's highly important not only to be learned, but to be virtuous. And so this is a little pamphlet. It's not very long at all, but it is all written in, it's all written in Old English. So, it's just true. So the very first one is a primer of ethics, truth. And then it talks about, this is interesting. I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but or the whole thing, but I'm just going to read this. Truth is sincerity. And in all we say and do, we must be sincere. We must not make false impressions directly or indirectly. There are many ways by which we may mislead and deceive others by what we say, and these ways differ very much from each other in criminality. Some of the principles of them are these. Number one, saying a thing when we know it is not true. Number two, saying a thing we do not know whether it is true or not. And I'm going to add to that and say, or saying it, because we posit things on the show all the time, but we don't telegraph that they're true. We always say, well, I got this secondhand, or this is what I'd heard, or so I mean, and that's okay. You can do that, but you can't say this is true when it's not. That's, you can't. Number three, prevaricating. So making an excuse for why you can't tell the truth, essentially. Well, but I mean, if I had said that, then this would have happened. And right. So that's prevaricating. Number four, misrepresenting. You can't misrepresent the truth, and you can't misrepresent somebody else. Well, I mean, okay, I lied. You can, but you should not do that. I mean, it's foul. It's like what you were talking about with you in your election, Michael, people misrepresenting you. Number five, exaggerating. You can't say, I mean, I like to exaggerate things about all the time. I like to say things that are exaggerated all the time, but I think it's pretty clear that I'm being, larger than life, if you will. It's not meant to be something.
What's the book again? Who's the author?
It is Ethics. That's better. You can see it better now. And it's called An Early American Handbook, a reprint of an 1890s original. And it says on the back, righteousness exalts a nation. I wonder why so many bad things are happening to us. Right? Proverbs 14:34a, righteousness exalts a nation. And I'm not sure who wrote this. I think George Washington compiled them, but I don't know. Oh, that's it right there. I think that if you school your kids, that's something that you should get for them, and they're not going to want to read it because it's old English, and you have to, who knows what the word prevaricate is. And that was always something funny with my kids when I was teaching. They'd have their phones sitting right here, and I'd say a word like prevaricate, and they'd go, but we don't even know what that means. I was always so mean, and I'd be like, might there be a dictionary on here instead of Facebook? Might you be able to figure that? I mean, it's sincerely, I mean, but I would sit down with them and do like we did. I mean, we talked about it during dinner and had those actual discussions. And some of them, the stories were really pretty interesting in there. I enjoyed the book. My kids didn't really enjoy the book, but I don't really care, because sometimes you do things that they don't really enjoy. And then later on, they're like, oh my gosh, I remember when we used to read that ethics book when we were having dinner. And you're like, no, did we really do that? So, it's a good thing. Just want to thank you too for taking that. Oh, you're so sweet, Dorn. We want to thank you for watching. Okay. And then we got you the title of the book. And I think we're good for today. And then, so Friday is Sandra Treywick, and she was just on the phone. She called me as I hung up the phone, or as I was showing my phone, which was hysterical. So she's next Friday, unless she called me to tell me that she's not. So we'll see. Then on the 11th, we have that how to run for the legislature. And then we're going to have people on who ran, and they're going to give you tips and tricks and that kind of thing. So that's on the 11th. And then 13th, our friends from Pike Off, Whitney and Kelly, are going to be back to talk about some things that are going on with Pike Off, because there have been significant things going on with Pike Off, and it's time for us to get back on there and start hammering away again at the OTA and our legislators who let them get away with things. Oh, shoot. I forgot to say this before we get off. Michael, you're going to die. Hold on. Oh no, where did it go? No. Why does it do that? Okay, so I got a Facebook message. Hey Dana, will you, if you're still on, would you put that up? So a Facebook group called OK Native published a Facebook post this morning about the person Stitt appoints retired Rear Admiral Gregory Slavonic as interim mental health commissioner. Well, apparently, Rear Admiral Slavonic is a board member of not OpenAI. I can't, for some reason, it will not let me go to the right post for whatever reason. Dang it. But he is, we need to look into the person that Stitt has appointed now to serve as commissioner of, oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't know. Go look this up. I don't know that this will help you, but if you, Dana, are you on my Facebook page or Rope Facebook page? Because then they can go there and find the actual link. Will you tell them? And I'm going to read this because I always love this. If my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways. Gracie, that's so true. And you know what I was thinking? Oh gosh, I was thinking this morning. I was mad about some legislator, but then I realized I hadn't been praying for them either. And so I'm like, oh, that's not okay. So Dana's on the Rope page. So go to the Rope page. And Dana has put in the Rope page this particular Facebook link that I don't seem to be able to bring up now on my phone about Governor Stitt's appointment as interim mental health commissioner, Rear Admiral Gregory Slavonic. We need to look into that person. So let's do that, shall we? Okay. Anything else, Michael, since you popped in at the end here?
Is that what was going to kill me?
Yes, because he's like, I wish it would come up and I could see it again. Because I was going to read it to you and you were going to be like, what the what? You would like, okay, hold on. I found their Facebook page. I went right to it. Okay, here it is. Are you ready? Okay, this is on OK Native Facebook page. Stitt appoints retired Rear Admiral Gregory Slavonic as interim mental health commissioner. Did you know that Slavonic is a board observer for Air Matrix AI? Air Matrix AI is partnered with Planeteer. Planeteer, the news is reporting, will be surveilling all Americans. Why would someone of his background with no history of working in mental health field be selected to lead that agency? Questions we should be asking Governor Stitt. Number one, did you make this call or did someone else ask you to make that call? Number two, what's the reasoning behind this choice? Number three, what's his background in mental health? Number four, what will be implemented into mental health programs going forward with his new leadership? Number five, will AI now be implemented in mental health care in Oklahoma? Number six, what are the benefits of this choice in your opinion? Whoever is running this page, kudos to you. That's exactly what we should be asking. I'm liking this, but no, loving this post right now, and I will share it because we have got to pay attention to who these people are. Michael, what did we do last week? We sat down with Mary at Visit and we actually went over the people that were appointed to the state board and showed multiple conflicts of interest in the things that they were even saying in their confirmation hearings. People, you can't complain if you know that these people have a certain background, but then you don't say, well, wait a minute, this is a big problem for me here. This person has that background.
Yeah. Well, that's part of that problem, though, is, we live somewhat in an echo chamber where we know our people know that we associate with, or, we're a small sphere but no one else knows. And do they even care? I mean, really, do they even care, Jenny? What do you think?
Oh Lord, I really want. Well, I'll be honest. I know. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. 100%, 100%, 100%. Here's the thing. I know so many people who don't care. And I know so many people who just simply don't do anything. I mean, they might even know, but they just don't do anything. All of us know these people. But you and I have both said this on different occasions on this podcast. It only takes a small number of people who are really digging in on these issues, who are really going to bat for. I mean, we're really just trying to make government better for ourselves, and to heck with the people who are sitting there with their thumbs up their backsides. But I mean, they get to come along from our benefit, right? Or they're benefited by what we do. But again, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I don't seem to be able to stop doing this, though I would enjoy doing that. I can't. I mean,
what does Dave think? What does Dave think about that? Does Dave think, I wish Jenny could just stop? Does he ever just say that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, like I've said before, thank God for Jenny White. Thank God for Jenny White.
No, thank God for David White, that David White subsidizes.
Yeah. Well, and in full disclosure, Jenny, just for your little comment before that, I hate the government. I hate everything about the government. I don't see anything good from the government. Maybe there is. At one point in time, maybe there was something good. But ultimately, what are they supposed to do? They're supposed to, protect our border, which they don't. Maybe better now under Trump. They're only supposed to do a couple things, like enforce contracts and protect our freedom. Our rights. I mean, that's the three things they're supposed to do. And we're like completely opposite of that. Everything.
Yeah. And I mean, the only thing that we can do is educate. That's all we can do. And just ask people, look, share. And so many of our friends and the people who are on, on our page, they totally do preach. Yes.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I mean, I even hate the word government, Jenny, because it doesn't even apply anymore. It's literal. It's just literal control. It's like criminal control at all facets. I mean, you can't drive without all these permissions. You can't do this without these permissions. You can't build this without these permissions. You can't do this without someone getting their take here or there. I mean, give me a break. It's the biggest racket. It's a total racket in today's time.
But you know what? So long as I am, and you have to know, Julie would have to end it with this. Julia, on your headstone, I am going to buy one for you and have that actually.
Maybe we ought to put on there, taxes put me here. Julia lies below. Taxes put me here.
Put her there. They stole so much of her money, it killed her. I mean, it's true. We're just laughing because it's true. Yeah. Well, and we just have to keep doing what we're doing. And we're just grateful that so many of you tune in every day. And then you share. And so many of you say, well, I've told so-and-so about it. And I've tried to get them to watch it. And I've sent them this. And that's all we can do. I mean, that's all we can do. It's up to the Lord to, perpetuate the rest of it. But we have to do what we can do. And that's what we're going to do.
Jenny, we have made a difference, like with the cameras, and I mean there's been multiple things, and guys like Jim Shaw and Tom Gann and the rest of them, hopefully like Molly Jenkins, hopefully that's just going to continue. It's going to take time, just like anything. We're going to have to just keep infiltrating the government basically with our people.
But I mean, it's true. It's there's no other way around it. There just isn't. So, I mean, I don't feel like complaining is a valid response to anything. I mean, it obviously I complain. And Dana, no,
100%.
absolutely 100, and I'm gonna get 150%.
Yeah.
You want to raise me, see me and raise me? Yes, absolutely. So if you don't think we did anything this year, that's a big fat lie. We totally did. And we made so many people uncomfortable that weren't doing the right thing. And that's what we need to do, because the press isn't doing this stuff. They're not doing it. As Jason Murphy points out, they're not doing that. So we have to keep doing it, because too few other people are going to. So that's just what we have to do. So anyway, all right. So good to see you come on at the end.
Sure.
Very glad to see you. And hopefully we'll see you on Friday with the donkey milk lady.
Yeah. Should be able to.
I have a friend who writes the Luther Register News. That's her paper. And she said something to me the other day that made me laugh so hard. I would have done a spit take had I been drinking. She said something about Sandra, and she said, "Here, hold my donkey milk." That's what we need. We need to get shirts with her face on that saying, "Here, hold my donkey milk," because it's just classic. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for being on with us today. We sure do appreciate you each and every day. And we will see you again on Friday. And like, share, and even continue to comment after we're off of here. We love that. So thanks for being with us. We'll see you again on Friday morning.